Welcome to Philly Tech Connect podcast, where Philly's tech minds meet. CEOs, developers, dreamers. This is your space. Each week we explore the journeys of tech innovators. Join us and be inspired.
Hey everyone, Dave here with another episode of the Philly Tech Connect podcast. Today I'm speaking with Avery Dante. He loves space, renewable energy, new materials, and he's fascinated by how we design and build our cities. He's also leading a dev team building Food Forest AI, a tech company building tools that enable food and beverage teams to source ingredients, packaging, and services in seconds. His key differentiator is making complex supply chain relationships visible and accessible. Avery, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for your time, Dave.
Thank you. This is cool. I haven't had a lot of people in the food space, so I'm interested to kind of learn a little bit more about your background that kind of led to tackling this industry, and then specifically kind of what you're working on. So, give me a little bit about your background, because I'm hearing like renewable energy, space, food, lots of good stuff.
Yeah. So I originally started my journey. I was doing mechanical engineering at Temple years ago, and slowly made my way into software engineering. Did a boot camp before COVID, which feels like a whole life ago.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Back in 2017, 2018. And right when COVID started, I was working at this company downtown. And then some friends of mine hit me up after I was let go because of all the things that are going on at the time. And they contacted me saying they wanted to build a marketing agency and they needed a tech lead. So we hopped in there and then we started working on some companies for some people, some nonprofits and stuff. And providing services like that can get really time consuming and energy depleting. So
I
we
hear you.
decided we wanted a product. And it so happens that someone we knew who is in the food manufacturing space, they let us know that there was a big hole to fill. And the hole was connecting manufacturers with brands and brands connecting with manufacturers so they can create products. So we started building a search feature, which kind of was like a directory at first. But then we found that there was a bigger problem, was just like some type of infrastructure for the space. Um, and I can get into that a little bit more, but I wanted to.
All right, yeah. So so when you talk about manufacturing, basically in the food industry, are we talking about the production of the food, like ingredients and stuff like that, or are we talking about the packaging or both? Like, are those done by separate people? I don't really know a lot about it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So honestly, before we even did this, I didn't know anything, bro. Um, I thought that food was created at like the magical Kellogg factory where they had all the grains, they packaged it, they grew the stuff there, and they shipped it to the grocery store. I thought it got made in one place and then went to the grocery store. Jumping into this product and learning more about the industry, we learned that supply chain is not linear. It's really a web. And it's a web of like a dozen different companies. One company, like you're saying, would handle packaging. Another would handle, the sourcing of the ingredients, which they might not even make. They might get the ingredients from a farm in Ecuador, ship it to the factory where it gets synthesized or baked or, rolled over into whatever product you need it to be to make the product. Might ship it to another factory where they actually make your recipe, but they might be making recipes for like 10 different companies. And then from there, it goes to the packaging plant or facility. Maybe they do it there, sometimes they don't, where they put your label on it. And from there, it might go to,
A grocery
the
store, like
exactly.
distribution centers, yeah. Okay, yeah, so it's pretty there's a lot of moving parts here. And so when you talk about you kind of uncovered this big problem, at what point in the supply chain did you find that there was the biggest issue, and or was it just throughout the entire thing?
That's a really good question too. So it's interesting that you say that. So I guess I'll speak to where how we saw the problem. So friend of ours is a co-packer. They create nut butters for some companies, but then
Cool.
they also have a product that they sell too. So it's so they pack, but they also make a product. So it's kind of like the blurs are lined there. The
Yeah.
lines are blurred there. Um, Problem they had was finding a new sourcer or sourcing provider for like some nuts. say their provider dropped out or it didn't work anymore. It could be a number of things. They're like, oh, I need to find someone. So what they were using was this directory that looked like a 2000s MySpace page where it
Mm,
just had links to like companies. Some of the links were broken. Some of the companies weren't even in business.
yeah.
So they were like, I can't find what I'm looking for. Like, guys, you guys are already making websites. Why don't you just make a new version of this website? You can make it look cooler. You can make it have a way better user experience. We're like, okay, so we just started designing a website that looked cool that could do the same thing. Um, but then we realized that, apart from just people having problems searching for like their next partner, there was a deeper infrastructure issue that there really wasn't any like industry standard for how this data was organized. Like the web of interconnected people that I'm speaking of, there really was no place where you can go and be like, all right, we know how it's laid out. Some companies have it laid out this way. Some people are just working out of Rolodexes. Some people just have a list of, people in an Excel spreadsheet that they just know they can go to. Maybe they can connect them to someone else. Maybe they can provide what they need. So the base issue was just people searching for what they need. So we honed in on that. And that's the first product we're about to launch is AI-based search feature where you can type in just like natural language and find results for actual manufacturers.
Very cool. Okay, yeah. So I'm getting a sense that everything was almost like yellow pages, but just kind of like online, but barely digitized whatsoever. Just kind of yeah, names, numbers, websites. But like I said, are they in business? What do they charge? What types of terms
Yeah.
do they, want to facilitate? So you guys are kind of adding a more robust version for that. So this was originally applied to kind of maybe nut butters, but is now going to be across all types of food in manufacturers?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's crazy, man, because food is like one of the most important industries. We need food to survive, right? And people also need access to the sourcing or the supplies like yesterday. Because you can't stop production because the grocery stores need to be filled. So it's just like we're gonna figure out how to get it done. We're gonna make sure we get it done. So yes, it's really all across the food industry where people need to be connecting constantly. And also like all across the food industry, there definitely needs more of some type of infrastructure that's really solid and makes sense and can scale as food scales. Um, yeah, yeah.
For sure.
But yeah,
So how are you going about sourcing the manufacturers? Is this sort of like a scraping type of technique off of some of the old, platforms that existed, or is it more like self-service, like they are signing up, filling out a profile, because you mentioned some of these guys are not even in business anymore, so you probably have like data quality issues if you just go out on what's there.
yeah. So it's all of the above. We've first 2 years, we've literally like met with hundreds of manufacturers, just find them online, getting on a call, asking them questions, finding their problems, asking them if they want to join this platform for free, sending them a link to a form, they can fill it out, or we have a network growth team that just fills out the form for them. And then we started rolling into some like scraping. We're like, all right, this will take forever. Let's just scrape. We were hesitant to scrape because they're like, oh, we want to be all natural. We want people to know like we've vetted everyone. But the truth is like all our other competitors are going to scrape. We want to build our network fast. We want to provide value. So we're going to scrape and then we'll synthesize and clean up the data on the back end or, retroactively. So we started scraping. We've actually, gotten interns, hired people to come on and specifically just do that. And their focus is like filling out contact forms, checking out websites, going through the websites, reviewing scrape data to make sure it's legit, building out these lists. And we also do have people who do connect with people directly too, whether it's going to food expos, which there are a lot of, and also something that I did not really know was such a big thing prior to this, like people are meeting around food all the time, all over the world. So I've gone to expos myself, but we have people going to expos, meeting people, finding businesses, and also just learning more about the problems that these manufacturers have and these brands too, because the brand side of things is a whole other thing too.
Yeah. Have you thought about the business model here? Is this something where people get a subscription to get access to the database, people pay to be featured on it, or are we going to try to take some portion of a transaction if it was to happen between manufacturer and buyer? What are you thinking?
That's a great question. So the industry standard is like a commission-based thing. So there are another key player in the industry are consultants. So consultants will work with new brands or manufacturers to help them find service providers or to source ingredients. They usually take a commission off of the deals that they broker, and they're considered consultants, and then there are also brokers who do similar things, also with like logistical connections and deals. So they usually take percentages. We at first we're just like, all right, we don't want to do that, so we're gonna just do everything for free. And the value is we're meeting more people, we're getting our network larger, and we're also just learning more about the problems and challenges that these people have. And that is very valuable. The data is very valuable. Now, when we're launching, we're going to launch with a subscription-based model where teams will just pay a monthly fee and then they can get access to all these tools. The next level, so right now we're focusing on the operational layer. The next level is kind of giving more context and more insight around the industry in general, which is going to be heavily data focused. And that is going back to the infrastructure I spoke about, is like really building some type of core infrastructure that everyone can like look at and then kind of understand how supply chain works in the food and beverage industry. And that is a really big undertaking, but it starts with this operational layer where we kind of like get people connecting faster so that they can really fulfill those needs.
Nice. It's super cool. I mean, I'm always really intrigued by people building products in these industries that are maybe not like super intuitive. You kind of almost have to like get your feet wet in them to really know like what's going on. It's not like a productivity tool. Like everyone, we all kind of just know that from just like doing work and everything. This like takes some real kind of like research and investment of your time. You mentioned like you kind of really didn't know much about the food and the packing industry until you kind of got going. What was your process for learning enough about it to feel confident to kind of like start a business in it? And how long does it take to kind of be like, okay, I feel like I know something here. Is it like 6 months, 1 month, a year? Like what was it all like?
Yeah, it took a couple years. It took like at least 2 years of just meeting people and asking questions. And I do have two other co-founders who spend more of their time like in the client-facing side of the business where they are engaging with people all the time. And then we meet together and I, synthesize information that they've gathered. We talk about points, key like points and challenges that people have, and I just poke holes. So coming from the technical side, I've had to take all that information about the industry and then synthesize it and figure out like, okay, how can we use technology to make this better or make it easier for people? So just like kind of learning to be like a relentless problem solver has helped a lot for real, for real. And also just being open to, you know, just letting go of any like assumptions or, understanding I've had about the food industry before and just being like, all right, I'm gonna just download all this information. But it definitely took 2 years and hundreds of calls to
Wow.
organize all that and understand that.
Wild, man. I'm impressed though. So I know you guys kind of recently rebranded from Pick Your Pack to Food Forest AI.
Mhm.
What was the reason for kind of wanting to kind of have a new name? What was it about the old one that you felt like wasn't doing the job and why this new one?
That's a really good question. And so it's funny because Pick Your Packer, like it was something that we just like, all right, it sounds cool. It speaks to food people who like know terms like co-packer or co-manufacturer, especially when food is like closely tied to like the packaging industry, which is you can argue is a separate industry because there's packaging for all types of products, not just food, right? So we're like, all right, Pick Your Packer, it works, it's easy. But the problem we've had with Pick Your Packer is it didn't really connect us or it couldn't really speak to our like core mission, which we've also had problems or like challenges really figuring out how we can align with that mission with also aligning with the industry. So the mission is ideally to localize food sourcing, right? And to also get people connected to food more, right? Because I feel like food is so important, but people are kind of disconnected from it. Either it's like we're getting ingredients from the other side of the world or from the other side of the country, or just not understanding where your food actually comes from. We do see trends where people are getting more more conscious about like what they're intaking, what's in the food, how the food, really affects them. But there's still like a disconnect that we kind of want to bridge the gap. So we chose Food Force AI because we're kind of like, all right, we want to build interconnected, you know, network of supply chain folks that really helps humans connect back with the world and like where we get a lot of our power, which is through food and what we eat, and what we drink. So that's kind of where we got, Food Forest from. And also, we tag AI on there because we are using AI tools.
Of course.
AI is
Yeah.
all the rage.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. We want to raise money someday, so you got to throw that AI on there. Yeah, no, it's really cool because I've done a lot of travel in Southeast Asia and I volunteered on an organic farm for a little bit, and it was just
Oh,
kind of wild to even just see how the soup gets made, like
yeah,
literally, like where some of the stuff is so small time, just like a small farm or some small, and they're just like they're just drying stuff on the side of the road, and it's just crazy hard work just to kind of produce anything. I
yeah.
was like, wow, it's like, how is it that this? I feel like this should cost way more than it does because the amount of work that's sort of required. So yeah, in short, I had absolutely no concept of, how where the food really comes from.
Yeah.
That was still just scratching the surface. But so yeah, I mean, last, tell me a little bit about what's next for you guys and for people that want to find more about you. Where can they do so?
Yeah. So we're on LinkedIn. My other co-founders are very active on LinkedIn. I've been really focused on the product, so I don't, I'm not on there as much, but once you launch, I'm gonna be right on there. But you can find us on LinkedIn. www.foodforest.ai is our website right now. We've moved away from Pick Your Packer. We're about to launch in the next week. Not sorry, not the next week, the next month. Yep. And next steps launching and getting the subscriptions active, getting people connected on the platform, and also building out a more robust data network of all the key players, and then scaling that, and also figuring out ways we can, enable people to get access to that data, whether it's, stakeholders, whether it's other, food manufacturing businesses, investors, or just the everyday people. But the long-term goal is localizing food. And you made a good point. It's like in those other parts of the world, people are doing hard work to produce this food, right? And then we pay a couple dollars for it over here, right? And there are reasons that it's set up like that to make it more affordable. But what if your food was coming from the farm, in Center PA? There are lots of farms in PA, right? And we do get a lot of food from there, but what if you knew more about where the food was coming from? What if you could work on a farm for a week just to understand what it takes, Because it really is a empowering experience for real. But yeah, that's the future for Food Force AI. But we're starting with search and starting with connecting food manufacturers in the industry and also connecting brands with those manufacturers.
Super cool. Like I said, it's great to learn more about what you guys are working on and get the story here. I'm excited for your launch. So wish you the best. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for giving us some time today.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, Dave. Thank you.
That's all for today's episode of Philly Tech Connect. Join our community at phillytechentrepreneurs.com. Special thanks to our sponsor, shortlist.io, a digital marketing agency specializing in top-notch link building, content strategy, and web design. Stay innovative, Philly, and see you next time on Philly Tech Connect.